Smith Show starts right now.
$3.776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by the new Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Now with 4 levels of defense against gunk, wear, corrosion, and friction. We'll get to the calls in just a few minutes. But on the line with us right now is an NFL analyst for the family, former coach for the Carolina Panthers, who won an NFC championship in 2003, former coach of the Denver Broncos, who won an AFC championship in 2013, former coach of the Chicago Bears, now an analyst for the family, the one and only Coach John Fox is on the line with us. What's up, Coach? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Doing great, Stephen A. It's great to finally be on with you, man.
Man, please. It's a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. Let me get right to it by putting you on the spot. You are John Fox. You are John Fox. You have the number 1 overall pick. Okay? Don't think about the team for a second. Just think about the quarterbacks. Kyler Murray,
Right.
Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones. Who would have been your pick?
I got to be honest with you, Stephen A., and I would definitely go Kyler Murray. I honestly think that he has the explosion and evadability of a guy, I know these are big shoes too, of Michael Vick.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I think at this point in the offense he ran at Oklahoma, and really kind of the similarities that he's going to run with the Arizona Cardinals. I really like this guy's touch and accuracy and his ability to be able to deliver the ball from different angles, which as a mobile quarterback, I think, and I say that because he does it with accuracy.
Mm-hmm. And I asked that
question. So I'm
question.
looking for big things.
I tell you why I asked the question. The hesitancy with him obviously was his height. That would not have been a profound issue for you?
Not really. Even evaluating Russell Wilson when he came out, that was a big question in our building at the Broncos was his height. But he did play behind the University of Wisconsin, the biggest offensive line in football. I know it's college, but the guys he played behind were actually bigger than any NFL offensive line at that point in football. So it's finding windows, and some guys have that ability. So the height becomes a little bit less of a factor.
John Fox right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. The Arizona Cardinals, led by Kyler Murray, the number 1 overall pick in this past NFL draft, is playing the Oakland Raiders tonight. What have been your thoughts about the Oakland Raiders, particularly with the whole Antonio Brown helmet fiasco? Some people would look at it and say that's a distraction that they clearly did not need. It's indicative of things to come. Others say it's a blip on the radar screen. How does John Fox view that whole scenario?
Yeah, I think more of a blip on the radar, Stephen A. I think, Antonio's had different things with him, even with the Steelers. But the thing he had above all that was his production on the football field as a wide receiver in the National Football League. And I think ultimately, that's what the Raiders were looking at. And, I think they didn't have those type of weapons for Derek Carr a year ago. And I think, when we get into the regular season and we start playing real games for real, I think you'll see the pluses of Antonio Brown.
How are you feeling about Derek Carr at this stage and point in his career? I mean, he was playing lights out a couple of years ago under Jack Del Rio before he got hurt the second to last game of the season. Obviously, they got shellacked in the postseason because they didn't have a quarterback, so they didn't win that postseason game because they didn't have Derek Carr. But then last year, obviously with John Gruden's first year there, even though he, his completion percentage was up and what have you, his yards were up. The bottom line is that there are people that are looking at Derek Carr and wondering what his future is going going to be with that organization because there's some question marks about him. How do you feel about him based on your years of experience being an NFL head coach and working with quarterbacks as extensively as you have? What do you see from Derek Carr?
I think he's an outstanding player. And like you, Stephen A., I go back to when, Jack Del Rio was the head coach and the weapons he had around him. And what I mean by that is not just on offense, but the guys they got out there that play defense, and that's critical on any team's success. So last year I pretty much viewed the Oakland Raiders as almost an expansion team because of the approach they took in trading away some of their key players and their key weapons as a football team, and then not able to replace them until the 2019 draft, which they've done now. So, and some of the cap room and money they spent on veteran football players in the NFL, I think they spent about $55 million just revamping the skill positions on offense. I think the draft they utilized. They did take the first-round pick, running back out of Alabama,
Josh Jacobs.
I think,
yes,
John Jacobs, and I think that's going to be, that's a quarterback's best friend is the run game. So I look for Derek Carr and I look for the Oakland Raiders to be a much improved football team here in 2019.
But you know what I pay attention to, Coach? I pay attention to competition. And what I mean by that is it's real nice and dandy to sit up there and say, as many people have, that the Oakland Raiders, we're expecting big things from them, better things from them. Okay, I expect you to be better than 4-12. The flip side to it is look at the division that they're in. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. You've got Denver. Joe Flacco's their quarterback right now. Certainly he's not what he used to be, but he still can throw the football. And then, of course, you have the Los Angeles Chargers, who some are predicting might potentially make the Super Bowl, led by Phillip Rivers. So I'm looking at the division that the Oakland Raiders are in, and I'm saying, excuse me, based on that alone, you're going to have some problems. Right.
Yeah, I'm not picking them to win the division for all the reasons you just mentioned. There's no doubt. I think Denver, let's not forget, in my opinion, will have the best defense in the division. And they're able to run the ball. But at the end of the day, you're right. I just think they'll be more competitive within the division. I think they'll be more competitive with everybody on their schedule. How much of a jump? I do think they can win 8 games this year, and that's a marked improvement.
John Fox right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let me go to the Washington Redskins for just a second here. They play the Cincinnati Bengals tonight. Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State threw 50 touchdowns in the Big Ten. Obviously, he's got an arm, can make all the requisite throws. Threw 2 interceptions in his preseason debut last week sometime. But a lot of people, particularly in New York, felt like that was the pick that should have been made instead of Daniel Jones out of Duke. Where do you fall in that line of thinking, A? And B, what do you think about Dwayne Haskins with the Washington Redskins this season?
Well, I think, I can understand. I know a lot of the coaching staff there at Duke. I followed Daniel Jones because he played his high school football in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, which is where I've maintained a home over, about the last 15 years, familiar with his family. And I know the coaching that he got at Duke. I can see, and then even in his first outing, as an NFL player, although it was, not a lot of opportunities, but he was very impressive. I liked both of them. I actually had Haskins a little bit ahead of Daniel in the draft coming out, to be quite honest. I think they both have bright futures. I'd say off of one game in the preseason that Daniel Jones had a little bit better outing, but that's not saying much. I mean, I think there's still a lot of football and learning to do before they get to the regular season. But I like both players and high on both of them.
Educate my listeners about this. How much stock should we place in the preseason? Could you put that in perspective for folks that just may not know?
Well, they're not real games, and I think sometimes that's frustrating for fans. But they're real for coaches because they're evaluating players. Let's not forget, there's 90 players, and they have to pick 53 guys that are going to be imperative in what kind of season they'll have in the regular season. So they're learning new systems, how they fit, and create a culture in a building. From how to practice, to how to have meetings, to everything's just different. I mean, these kids now are they don't have biology class, they don't have history class. It's all football and just time management and how to become a professional. Those are all things that these guys are having to digest for the first time. So I think it's exactly what it is. It's practice, and it's practice games, and you see how guys respond, to competition, to the things they see, and things happen quickly, and you're being evaluated every snap. They do it in practice, but these games, and particularly for quarterbacks, are critical because backup quarterbacks and who your third quarterback's going to be, all those things. There's more evaluation of the game reps than there are practice reps.
John Fox, NFL analyst for ESPN, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Just a few more questions before I let you get on out of here, Coach. I want to switch to the Houston Texans and Jadeveon Clowney. He hasn't signed his one-year tender. The July 15 deadline came and went, no long-term deal. You're talking about the Texans being second amongst all NFL teams with more than $37 million in cap space, according to Over the Cap. I'm reading from an article on NFL.com as we speak. Where do you fall along those lines? Bill O'Brien is basically the de facto GM. They don't have a GM now that Rick Smith and Brian Gaine is out. But when you look at the Houston Texans, how valuable is Jadeveon Clowney to them? What do you think will happen in this particular situation? Because it appears to be as if he's on his way out. And I'm wondering what kind of impact do you think his potential absence will have on Houston's expectations for this upcoming season?
Well, I would be very concerned if I'm Bill O'Brien if he's without Jadeveon Clowney on that defense. I think he's, that kind of an impact player. In fact, I thought he was probably the most critical free agent, on that side of the ball, in the offseason. It didn't surprise me that they did tag him, franchise tag him. But the fact that he has not signed that yet is definitely concerning. But, I still think it's going to come down to I don't see him sitting out, not playing a la Le'Veon Bell. And I also think that depending on where they are in the negotiation process of the long-term deal, that still has a chance of getting done before the regular season starts as well.
Coach, before I let you get on out of here, a lot of noise is being made in New York about Sam Darnold and how he looks and what an upside they're expecting from him.